This is the key. I got shivers in my skin right now. This is the key. What you just said is the key to become a great leader in technology. You put yourself in a position where you can enable your team to do the best they can be. And they know they feel supported by their leader, where you don't have to micromanage them, but for the contrary, right? They have the freedom to develop. But to do that, number one, you have to attract the right type of people. And number two, you have to lead by example. That's why, leadership is inspirational. Leadership, it says, follow me and make sure you surpass me. Leadership says, I'm going to inspire you to do what we need to do, not because you have to, because you're going to get a paycheck, but because you want to, because you love it, and because you know you're making a difference. Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. This podcast is dedicated to interview the brightest mind in technology on the leadership side. I have come to realize that there is a lot of podcasts about technology, but they never speak about the leadership that took the technology to the level where we are right now. So today we have with us a great leader in technology, Alan Cantrell. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me, David. It's nice to be here.
Wonderful. Alan, for the audience, can you please tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
My full name is Walter Alan Cantrell. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I am Director of IT Service Management at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I also am an adjunct professor at Lipscomb University.
Wonderful. What do you teach at the university?
Well, I am currently teaching a database course, but I have taught a number of courses across the computer science, information technology, information security domains. So done quite a bit over the years. I've been an adjunct for 11 years.
That is amazing, and that shows why you wanted to do this podcast. In your heart is already this giving back mindset. Nobody that has a position like you will even think about going back and teach to the kids how to become better professionals. So congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. I have a lot of fun doing it.
Wonderful. So Alan, let's look back. The whole purpose of this podcast is to shine the light on the people that eventually want to get your place, our place in technology, how to become a great leader. And I know it takes a lifetime. So let's look back at your days of high school. What was in your mind when you were graduating high school?
When I was graduating high school, it was times were tough. Believe it or not, there weren't a lot of jobs around, and so I was very concerned about being able to make a living, honestly. And so this was in the early '80s, and so things were quite a struggle, and that's why I decided to, when I first graduated high school, I did not want to go to college. I didn't want to attend, college or go to school after high school. And after a couple of years of, trying to find jobs and understanding what my life might turn out like, I decided to go to school. And one thing led to another, and here we are today.
Okay, so there must have been a process. So you tried to get a job for 2 years. First of all, what made you decide to go? Did you go to computer science school, or what did you take?
Well, I started off. I started off wanting to be an electrical engineer. So I started off as pre-engineering major, taking the basic courses. Then I decided for a while I was going to be a chemistry major. And then I had a car accident, and so I had to drop out for a semester, and it gave me time to really think about what I wanted to do at that point. And so what I had enjoyed up to that time was math. I had really had a lot of fun doing, calculus and trigonometry and thought that was very interesting. So I decided to become a math major. And then pretty soon, I became a little insecure about, okay, what am I going to do with a math degree? And that now I understand that's actually a lot of things you do with a math degree. But I thought I'd be stuck teaching math somewhere, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be a teacher for the rest of my life. So I added a second major. I double majored in computer science.
So what brought you to the? I know. So people are listening to this. You guys are in technology. You know that math and computer science are close brothers, right? Like I know that. Like
yes,
even
sir.
my faculty, right? It was the faculty of math and computer science. But
Right.
what led you to computer science side?
Well, at the time, for the first thing was I took some computer science courses, and I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun. And you're correct that where I went to school as an undergraduate, the math and computer science were one department, and so it just seemed like a natural thing. There was for computer science, there was a prescribed math minor at this university. So it just seemed like a natural thing. I had to take a lot of the math to get a computer science degree anyway. And it was highly recommended that you take some computer science as a math major. It just seemed like a natural thing to do.
It's incredible because for me, and this is for the audience, if you think you're bad at math, that shouldn't be a discouragement. For me, I was the worst at math. The worst. I was taking trigonometry, calculus, all that. But I loved it. I loved the solving puzzle aspect of it. So I persevered to the point that I relied on my friends, which were math geniuses, on helping me out. And at the end of the year, I ended up having better marks than they did because they lacked the discipline that I had, because I had to overcome my weakness with a lot of discipline and perseverance.
Well, I think that's I think perseverance is possibly underrated. I think that talent only takes you so far. When you're highly talented, when you have a lot of confidence in your ability level, you might tend to not persevere at the same level. You might tend to trust your skill as opposed to your work ethic. And what I find is when you get to a certain level, you have to do the work. There's no, ability helps, but you have to do the work. And I think that's lost on some students when you're young and you're used to being the smartest kid in the room in high school. And then, when you get into an undergraduate program or into a master's and PhD program, you realize you're just another one of the guys.
Yes.
And the work is the only thing that separates you.
Incredible. Now, you were saying that you were struggling a lot at the end of high school. That's why you had to get a job those first 2 years. We have a very similar story, by the way. But this is your podcast, not mine. How could you afford to go into school? Because university is not cheap, right?
My family was very supportive. My mother and father were, they made it very clear that they would do whatever was necessary for me to succeed. And I was the first one in my family to, my immediate family to get a degree. So, that was a lot of it. And of course, in the United States, when you don't have a lot of money, and I didn't, at the time I found some jobs, I worked, but I wasn't making a lot of money, didn't have a lot of money. So there is, a lot of financial aid for, in the United States for people who don't have a lot of money. So I received a Pell Grant and, I pinched pennies and did without.
Why not?
Didn't go to a lot of parties and things like that.
Which actually helped you get better in school, right?
Yes, it did, actually.
So the pattern here is what is against you is actually for you if you think about it, right? Your obstacles become your stepping stones to success, right?
Well, yes. Well, actually, that was true. It was very interesting. After I'd been in school a couple of years, it was amazing how things started to turn around for me. Just a lot of doors started to open. I started to receive scholarship money. I got a really good job, at a local government agency doing computer work, and got some experience prior to finishing my degree. And so, I felt very lucky, felt very blessed.
Yeah, it's incredible. But when I interview very successful people like you, that's the common denominator. Like, we get to do whatever it takes to achieve what we want. How many kids nowadays have a job while going to university? Very little. Now they rely completely on government funding if they don't have the money, and then they end up with tens of thousands of dollars of debt at the end of their schooling, and that's not a good way to start your life. For me, it was very similar. I was blessed that I was able to get a job while I was going through university, and this is, again, for the people that are listening, there is no excuse. I was famous because I was the night student. I had to take most of my courses after 5 p.m. because I had to get a job. Otherwise, I couldn't afford it. For me, summer was the time where I spent the most time in university. Because I was taking advantage of every class that I could take so I could finish faster, so I could get a better job.
Right. I understand your motivation there.
Right. In my case, I actually started university. I already had one kid. I was married already. And then, the second kid was on the way. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? Right. I was blessed that my wife was working, so she was helping me go through all this. But again, my obstacles became my stepping stones to success.
Yes.
What did you do after school?
Well, at first, because I had the math degree, a friend of mine said, "Hey, I'm going to take an actuarial exam. I'm thinking about becoming an actuary." And I thought, well, I'll give that a try. And so there were when we got to the testing center, there was another one of our classmates there to take the exam. So there were three of us that graduated together that took the first actuary exam. And I was the only one of the three of us that passed. And so that led to me becoming an actuary an actuarial assistant for a short period of time and moving to Nashville. I really didn't fit in that culture, didn't feel like it was the right thing for me. And when I started to realize that, I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I felt, I had worked very hard in school and thought, okay, get a job and everything's gonna work out great. And now I was in a job that I wasn't happy with, my first job. So I applied for graduate school at Vanderbilt University in computer science and was admitted and started working on my master's in computer science at Vanderbilt. Within probably inside a year, I was approached by a gentleman that was starting a networking team. Back then, when I say network team, starting a network team, this was back in the days when, universities and the military and a handful of high-tech companies had email and things like that and could share things across the network. But years before anyone had invented any kind of a browser or a multimedia platform, so the so-called World Wide Web hadn't come along yet, and I became one of the first network engineers. As a matter of fact, myself and one other colleague of mine wrote the first job description at Vanderbilt University for a network engineer. We collaborated on that. And then, of course, we were the first two guys to have that title at Vanderbilt University.
Network engineer, right?
Yes, sir.
That has nothing to do with being an actuary.
No, but it was. As I said, I was much better suited to that culture. That works.
For the audience, can you describe what an actuary do? We work with actuaries because we do a lot of insurance work. Right. But can you describe what it does?
Actuaries calculate risk and benefits for either insurance companies or benefits consulting companies. If you are designing retirement plans for companies, you might become an actuary, and they would estimate, how much a plan would earn, how much money needed to be put into a plan to be able to fund certain types of benefits for an organization. That's the type of work they were doing at the company I was working for.
And and that's why you got the job, because it's highly relying on math and logic, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So network engineering, what was your first job putting together a network?
Well, I started off supporting the Department of Finance primarily, and I had other jobs, but other clients and customers, but primarily the Department of Finance at Vanderbilt University Medical Center at the time. And believe it or not, they already had an encrypted network.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Were they on TCP/IP, or still they had a token ring network? What was the protocol?
Ethernet at layer 2, and of course,
wow.
We had TCP/IP as well as an old protocol that you don't hear much about anymore called DECnet, which was invented by Digital Equipment Corporation. And so those were the two primary layer 3 protocols or layer 4 protocols that we had, in our organization. And the encryption we were running was 56-bit DES, and they were hardware devices. So they had it was very interesting. Encryption is built into every laptop now. Back then, you couldn't do that with any type of system that I was aware of. Anything that installed on a desktop PC, and so
the processors weren't fast enough to do that. If you think about it,
yes,
the capacity
yes.
of the processors and the memory, the RAM that you had, they couldn't handle it.
Right. So the way we did that, we had hardware devices that did the encryption, and we would cable, point to point from the workstation back to these encryption devices.
Incredible. So you were actually doing your master's in computer science, and you already had a job in the university doing network.
That's correct. That's correct.
It's fascinating. What happened after that, after you graduated?
Well, I didn't. I actually left the university before I graduated. I went to work for a networking software company called Network General. If you've ever heard the term sniffer, Network General trademarked that name. They were some of the inventors of the first network protocol analyzers, and had patented technology. That company has now been absorbed into a company called NetScout Systems, and they're still around today and still have some groundbreaking technology. We're a customer of NetScout at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. So went to work for them, stayed there for a while, and then went to work for a company called Force Systems, which was quickly bought out and became part of a larger company from the United Kingdom called Marconi Communications. And so I stayed there for a while, and then came back to Vanderbilt University Medical Center in 2003. And I've been there ever since.
2003. So now, what a way to turn around, right? So in your whole career, were you more focused on network administration then, or did you ever have to do anything with software development or on the software side?
Not much. I've written some code here and there, but I would never have called myself a full-time software developer. That's kind of interesting. As I said, I've majored in computer science and studied coding. My master's, in my master's program, I did it in operating systems performance. So we didn't really write that much code, even as a grad student. We did more analysis and
right.
Modeling operating systems and looking at how you could model around performance bottlenecks.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, which has a lot to do with networking, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
When was the first time that you got an assignment where you had people that were working under you, you were responsible for them?
Well, that was at Marconi Communications. And when I went to work for Marconi, I was still living in Nashville. And so they had a large project with a U.S. federal agency called Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. And one of the primary businesses that TVA is in the region is they are a power provider. They sell power to the local electric companies. And so they're all over the region. When I say Tennessee Valley, we're talking about the Tennessee River Valley. So they're across several states. And they had something on the order of 60 sites around, Tennessee, Alabama, the Carolinas, and a little bit down in Mississippi and Kentucky. And so we were building a voice video and data network for them. And this was around the time that we were really starting to converge networks between voice, video, and data. The technology was beginning to exist that made that possible. And so I worked on that for probably, I guess, a couple of years maybe. And then went to work, on a project down in Puerto Rico. We were putting the same type of networking gear in every government office on the island of Puerto Rico.
Wow.
I worked down there for about a year. And
how was the weather? Super hot.
The weather was lovely. It was the biggest challenge there was just it was pretty much an all-day trip getting down there. So
right.
So if you wanted to be productive, you spent a lot of time traveling. If you want to be home at all and be productive, you had a tension there. So you had to balance, okay, how much time am I going to spend traveling back and forth versus how much am I going to get done this week? So, but I had a lot of fun and made some great friends down there in Puerto Rico. When that was finished, Marconi didn't give me a project for a while. I was working in professional services engineering, and called the gentleman I was reporting to at the time, and was a little nervous. Okay, I'm not getting any work. I've been sitting at home for a few weeks, so still getting paid. And finally, he said, "Well, hey, how'd you like to be a manager for the Mid-Atlantic region?" So, which interestingly enough, did not include Tennessee.
Wow! But it was your first management role then, right?
Yes, it was. And so I took over a group of engineers that were doing the same work I was doing in the Mid-Atlantic region, in Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, and started doing that. Started supporting those customers in their network implementations. Fairly soon after that, I picked up another group that was doing build work in central offices for providers like AT&T. For example, the major phone companies.
One of the biggest obstacles that a high-performance engineer like you face when they become a leader is that they expect the same kind of performance or better from their employees. Did you ever had that problem, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I must admit, I'm still growing into that. One of the things I've learned over the years is that the personality traits that make you a great engineer don't necessarily make you a great manager.
Exactly. they have nothing to do one with the other, actually.
That's correct. And so I still feel like I'm learning, but I feel like I'm in the best place I've ever been. And fortunately for me, I've got the best team I've ever had. The people that work for me now, they are all highly skilled and really love their jobs, love working together, and I feel like my job is more to make them successful, to serve them, and make sure that they have the things that they need. And I really don't have to do a lot of management. It's almost not fair to say they work for me. I kind of feel like I work for them, to be honest with you.
My God, what you just said, Alan, if anybody's listening, this is the key. I got shivers in my skin right now. This is the key. What you just said is the key to become a great leader in technology. You put yourself in a position where you can enable your team to do the best they can be. And they know they feel supported by their leader, where you don't have to micromanage them, but for the contrary, right? They have the freedom to develop. But to do that, number one, you have to attract the right type of people. And number two, you have to lead by example. That's why, leadership is inspirational. Leadership, it says, follow me and make sure you surpass me. Leadership says, I'm going to inspire you to do what we need to do, not because you have to, because you're going to get a paycheck, but because you want to, because you love it, and because you know you're making a difference. Congratulations. Thank you. That was amazing.
Yes. Very, very well said. And fortunately for me, I think I have the people who work for me are all very competent. They're very conscientious, and they do exceed me. I mean, there have been times over the past few years that I have been very nervous about some of the decisions that some of my employees have made, but I decided, I step back, see what happens, and they pleasantly surprised me. Because I guess what I've learned is there are more than one way to do things, and sometimes their ways are better. So I'm fortunate in that I can do exactly what you said: is step back and trust them to do their job.
Having that skill is unbelievable, and not having that skill, it could be so bad that your whole career could be at risk. What happened to me is that I didn't have that skill. I always thought that I had the best solution. Having all these amazing, brilliant engineers working for me, I was forcing them to do stuff my way, because I had kept in myself the vague idea that I was the best software engineer in the world. So when pride takes over, you don't allow innovation to happen, because you want people to do stuff the way you used to do it.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, if I'm doing that, why would I hire anybody? What value would they add? Right?
Right. Well, I must confess, it's been a long journey to get to this point, David.
Through a lot of trials and errors, right?
Right. I did not start off this way. I was I very much wanted people to do things my way for many years, and I'm just fortunate at this point in my career. As I mentioned, I have the best team I've ever had. They are really outstanding group of people, and I have the utmost respect for all of them. And that means the world to me. I can give them a general direction and step back and let them execute, and things work out very well.
That's beautiful, but it takes a while to get there, and the leader is still responsible for the performance of the team. So if your team is doing that, it's because you're giving them the right leadership. It just comes around that. Like, if people look at technology, they say, wow, look how far we've come. But it's only through great leadership. Mm-hmm. It's only through what we enable people to do. If you don't give them the chance to fail, for example, in a way that they are not going to be punished to the point that they're going to be let go, then they're going to succeed. Now, if they fail because of negligence, that's different. And I want to ask you that, what has been the worst situation where you had to discipline an employee, a team member, and how do they respond?
Well, the worst. We had, when I first came back to Vanderbilt, I had one employee that went on a performance plan and just wasn't meeting expectations. And we went through multiple counseling sessions and had our human resources department involved. And eventually we, had to separate we had to separate ourselves from this person. And that was the most difficult. But I felt like at the time we really gave him, every chance to, we laid out in no uncertain terms, you need to do this by this date in order to, stay out of trouble. And just
didn't work out. And for me, that was the hardest thing to do, letting people go. And the problem is that that's part of being a great leader. If you leave somebody that is not performing after giving them several chances, they don't step up. What happens is that they start polluting the other people.
Oh, yes.
The resentment starts too, because the other people that are performing are saying, how come he's getting the same that I'm getting? Meanwhile, he's doing nothing and I'm picking up all the slack, for example, right?
Right.
It's important.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately, it's still unpleasant having to go through the process. And it's time consuming. It's not. That's my least favorite part of being a leader. But fortunately for me, I haven't had to do anything like that in many years. So,
another thing that I noticed at the beginning, it was horrible. But when we had to let people go, we do it with the most respect, because they're human beings after all. There might just not be a good cultural match, or maybe they're not in the right position.
Mm-hmm.
And I have come to by coincidence, talk to some of these people that I had to let go. And some of them will tell me, David, you letting me go was the best thing that could ever happen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It shook my world. And because of that, I realized that I wasn't in the right position. And now I have this beautiful, flourishing career where I feel happy and I'm becoming the best that I can ever be. But I wasn't strong enough to resign.
Right.
I was too afraid to resign.
Right. Well, I think being humbled helps when you are, when your ego is crushed and you're left to, just to your own thoughts and, okay, what do I really want? And, where do I want my career to go next? And what is of value to me? Sometimes that gives you clarity that you couldn't have realized any other way.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And life is so short to waste it in a place where you don't feel comfortable, right?
That's correct.
It's so short. And we're so blessed that we live in North America, the most prosperous region on earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me right now, it's actually hard to find people.
Well, we're having the same struggles here. So
right.
I think that's true in technology all over the place. But it's fortunate. It's challenging, but it's also fortunate in a way that I have never, since I mentioned early, when I first finished high school, jobs were scarce, and I never have looked back since I decided to go to school. I'll say that. It's you hear a lot these days. There are other ways to do it besides going to college. That was the best decision I ever made, and highly recommend it to anyone. I think the more education you have, the better off you are.
And it doesn't matter your financial situation, because you are a clear example of that. I am a clear example of that. My grandfather, he wanted to be a civil engineer. So when I said my grandfather, we're talking people that were born in the first decade of the 1900s, right? Like, we're talking people were riding horses still, right?
Yes.
And so he wanted to become a civil engineer because of the situation. He was going through the big depression back then,
right?
1930s. He had to quit his university and he had to just focus on work to provide for his family.
Yeah.
But he always wanted to be a professional. Listen to this is crazy. When he became 48 years old, he said he fell in love with accounting back then. And he said, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to become a chartered accountant. He went back to school, back to university. He had all his schooling. By the time he was 52, he graduated 53. And he worked as that until he died when he was 84.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a great story.
So for me, higher education is no excuse. If you really want to change your life, go ahead and do it. And it doesn't matter how old you are.
I agree. Absolutely.
Right? You know, I was talking this morning with a person that was a police officer for 10 years. And he loved his job, but he got exhausted at the end. And he decided to go back to school and get a medical degree.
Oh, wow.
And then he got an MBA, and now he's the CEO of a big hospital.
Wow, amazing.
Another amazing story, right? So, like, I think we just get limited by our brain, and we think we can't, but we can do whatever we put ourselves into it, right? We set ourselves a goal, regardless of where you are, you can actually achieve it, right?
I agree.
Alan, if you had access to a time machine and you could go back and talk to the person that was working as an actuarian, what would you tell that kid?
Oh, what would I say? I just wouldn't worry. I can remember how stressful that time was. And you know, a few minutes ago, we were talking about gaining clarity, you know, during times, you know, when you're humble. And at the time, I, as I mentioned, you know, I'd worked so hard in school, and I took that job as an actuary, and I was just miserable almost from day one. And there wasn't anything wrong with the job or the people I was working with, it just wasn't the right culture for me. And so I at the time I was very concerned that I had made a big mistake, you know, made this huge mistake that I'd ruined my career somehow. I would say, don't worry, keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep working hard, and everything will work out. And it has, and it's worked out very well.
You know, sometimes God has a mysterious way of showing us where our life path is. And sometimes a mistake, a failure is the thing that we need to change our life and go into the right path, like you did, right?
That's correct. Yes.
But when we're going through that, you feel that you're gonna die and that your life is over.
Well, it is. You feel that way, but you know, the Lord blesses us, you know.
I know, it's beautiful, and I'm so glad that you're a man of faith, and I'm a man of faith too. And for me, if you take God out of the equation, I should have been dead 3-4 times over because of the mistakes.
Definitely. Oh, I feel I am certain that I have been chosen. That someone's watched over me, but I could have been dead or in a lot of trouble several times.
Right. No, it's incredible. I really want to thank you for your time. I want to respect your time. I know you're a busy professional. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
What would I write in it? Let me think. That's a tough question, Dave. If I had one, I guess trust God.
I think that's so important. And you know, it's so to the point. Just trust God. And for the people that are listening to this is not a coincidence. This is supposed to be a leadership podcast in technology, and now we're talking about faith. And that's not a coincidence. You know, Alan, I stopped believing coincidences a while ago because I have come to realize that everything is being allowed in my life as long as you want to follow God's will.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said trust God, it's exactly right. And it's a so much easier way to go through life if you do that. You know, look at yourself, how successful you are, right? And look at myself, like all the stuff that God has allowed me to do in my life, and especially survive from the stupid mistakes that I have done.
Yes. Well, I've made my own.
Alan, thank you so much for being in the show. If people like to ask you more questions or inquire about your teachings at the university, where can they find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Walter Alan Cantrell on LinkedIn, or that's probably the best place. I'd be happy for you to post my personal email. I'll get that to you.
Fantastic. Alan, thank you so much. Thank you for changing this world for a better place, and keep shining your light.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David, for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.